I stood on the edge of the Aurora Bridge at 2 a.m., my phone buzzing with congratulatory messages about the grand opening of my restaurant. Except it wasn't mine anymore. The sign outside now read, "New owner, H. Brown," and every chef, server, and sous chef I'd trained for 2 years was inside celebrating without me. My hands shook as I climbed onto the railing, the dark water of Lake Union waiting below. That's when I heard my father's truck screech to a stop behind me. "Ethan, get down." His voice cracked. "Your mother left you something." I turned to see him holding a small metal envelope, his weathered mechanic's hands trembling. "She said to give this to you if everything ever fell apart." I climbed down from the railing, my legs barely holding me. Dad wrapped his arms around me, and I broke down on his shoulder like I hadn't since Mom's funeral 5 years ago. He guided me to his truck, and we sat in silence as I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a small brass key and a handwritten letter on Mom's stationery. Her handwriting brought tears to my eyes immediately. I read it aloud in the dim cab light. "Ethan, my sweet boy. If you're reading this, the past has finally found you. I'm so sorry. Don't trust a woman named Brown. She's part of the family I once escaped. Go to First National Bank downtown, box 447. Everything you need is there. I love you. Fight back. Mom." I looked at Dad, confused. What family? What is she talking about? He stared through the windshield at the bridge I'd almost jumped from. "Your mother never told you everything about her life before we met. She was an accountant, yes, but not just any accountant. In 1995, she worked for a restaurant group in Chicago that was laundering money for organized crime. When she discovered what they were doing, she went to the FBI and became their key witness." My chest tightened. Mom was a whistleblower? She helped them take down Vincent Brown and his entire operation. 15 restaurants, all fronts. Vincent went to prison for life. His family lost everything. Your mother entered witness protection, changed her name from Sarah Chen to Sarah Mercer, and moved to Oregon. That's where I met her, working at my garage. She never stopped looking over her shoulder. I felt sick. Haley Brown. She's his granddaughter? Dad nodded slowly. I started suspecting it 6 months ago when she kept asking about your mother's past. Where she grew up, where she went to school, if she had any enemies. I did some digging. Haley's real name is Haley Brown Vincent. Her grandfather died in prison 3 years ago, but before he did, he told her everything. About the woman who destroyed their empire. The pieces fell into place. Haley hadn't fallen in love with me. She'd hunted me. Found me through culinary forums, researched my background, and targeted me specifically because I was Sarah Chen's son. She destroyed me on purpose, I whispered. This wasn't just about the restaurant. She wanted to make you suffer the way her family suffered. Take everything from you, humiliate you, and push you to. Dad couldn't finish the sentence. I thought back to our relationship. How she'd pushed me to invest everything, even my mother's life insurance money. How she'd insisted I take out loans in my name while keeping the restaurant registration, simple, in hers. How she'd slowly isolated me from friends and family, calling Dad negative and my chef friends jealous. The manipulation had been surgical. We need to go to that bank, I said, my voice steadier now. First thing tomorrow. That night, I stayed at Dad's house in my old room. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment with Haley, seeing the lies behind every smile, every kiss, every promise. She'd told me she loved me the night before she revealed the truth. Then she'd looked me in the eyes and said, "You'll never rise again, Ethan. Just like your mother destroyed my family, I've destroyed you. We're even now." But we weren't even. Because Mom had prepared for this. The next morning, we arrived at First National Bank as soon as it opened. The manager led us to the vault, and I inserted the brass key into box 447. Inside was a thick folder, a USB drive, and another letter. I opened the folder first. My hands went numb as I flipped through the pages. Bank statements, property records, court documents, and photographs of 3 other men, chefs, just like me. Each one had a story attached. Marcus Chen in San Francisco, 2019, lost his bistro to Haley, attempted suicide, survived. James Rodriguez in Denver, 2021, lost his steakhouse to Haley, succeeded in taking his life. Kenzo Tanaka in Portland, 2023, lost his sushi restaurant to Haley, hospitalized after a breakdown. She's done this before, I said, my voice hollow. She's done this 3 times before me. Dad picked up Mom's second letter and read it. His face went pale. Ethan, your mother spent her last year tracking Haley. She knew what was coming. She collected everything: police reports, witness statements, financial fraud evidence. She even has recordings. I plugged the USB drive into my phone. Audio files filled the screen, dated from 2020 to 2023. Mom's voice came through clearly on the first one. This is Sarah Mercer, formerly Sarah Chen. I'm documenting evidence of Haley Brown Vincent's criminal activities for law enforcement purposes. My mother had built a case against Haley from beyond the grave. We spent the entire day in Dad's living room, going through every piece of evidence Mom had collected. The USB drive contained over 50 audio recordings of phone calls, meetings, and interviews Mom had conducted with lawyers, private investigators, and even one of Haley's former associates who felt guilty about what they'd done to James Rodriguez. The pattern was always the same. Haley would research the children of people connected to her grandfather's case, not just witnesses, but anyone who'd worked against the Brown family. She'd identify chefs specifically, young men building their dreams. She'd seduce them, gain their trust, manipulate them into bad business deals, and then take everything. The goal wasn't just money. It was revenge through destruction. James Rodriguez's father was a prosecutor who worked on Vincent Brown's case, I said, reading through Mom's notes. Marcus Chen's uncle was an FBI agent involved in the investigation. Kenzo Tanaka's mother was a restaurant inspector who testified against the Brown family. Dad looked up from the police reports. And your mother was the accountant who provided all the financial evidence. Haley saved you for last, Ethan. You were the main target. The realization hit me hard. I wasn't just another victim. I was the grand finale of her revenge plot. Mom's final letter explained everything in detail. She'd been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 2 years before she died, and during her treatment, she'd started seeing news articles about chef suicides. When she investigated and found the connection to the Brown family, she knew Haley would eventually come for me. She'd spent her last months gathering evidence, hiring investigators, and building an airtight case. She couldn't warn you directly, Dad said, his voice breaking. She was afraid Haley was already watching. If you'd known the truth too early, Haley might have disappeared or changed her plan. Your mom needed Haley to commit the crime completely so there would be enough evidence to convict her. I felt anger rising in my chest. So Mom just let this happen? She let me fall in love with that monster? She didn't have a choice, son. Look at the dates. She died 3 weeks before you met Haley at that expo. She set up this safety deposit box as a failsafe, hoping you'd be strong enough to survive if things went wrong. Dad handed me another document. And she left instructions. The instructions were clear. Contact FBI agent Melissa Torres, who'd worked Mom's original case in 1995 and was now a senior agent in Seattle. Present all evidence. File charges for fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and attempted murder based on the pattern with the previous victims. I called Agent Torres that afternoon. She arrived at Dad's house within 2 hours, bringing 2 other agents with her. When she saw Mom's evidence, her expression shifted from professional courtesy to genuine shock. Sarah Chen was one of the bravest witnesses I ever worked with, Torres said quietly. She saved dozens of lives by taking down the Brown organization. I can't believe she spent her final days protecting you from this. We spent the next week working with the FBI. They verified every document, interviewed Marcus Chen and Kenzo Tanaka, and reviewed the evidence from James Rodriguez's case that had been closed as a suicide. With Mom's recordings and financial documents, they had enough to move forward. The FBI set up a controlled situation. They wanted to catch Haley in the act of gloating, admitting to her crimes. They wired me up and sent me back to what used to be my restaurant, now called Brown's Waterfront. I walked through the doors I'd designed, past the bar I'd built with my own hands, and saw Haley sitting at the chef's table reviewing menus. She looked up and smiled, that same charming smile that had once made my heart race. Ethan. I didn't expect to see you again. I thought you'd be gone by now. I sat down across from her, the wire cold against my chest. I wanted to understand why. Why you did this to me. She leaned back, confidence radiating from her. You really don't know? Your mother destroyed my family, Ethan. My grandfather died in a prison cell because of her. My father lost everything, our restaurants, our reputation, our future. I grew up poor because of Sarah Chen. So you decided to destroy her son? I decided to make things even. An eye for an eye. Your mother took my family's legacy, so I took yours. And I made sure you suffered every step of the way. She laughed coldly. The best part? You were so easy to manipulate. All I had to do was smile and tell you I believed in your dream. Agent Torres and her team walked through the front door at that exact moment. Haley Brown Vincent, you're under arrest. Haley's face went from confident to terrified in seconds. She stood up quickly, knocking her chair backward. What is this? Ethan, what did you do? I didn't respond. I just watched as Agent Torres and two other agents moved toward her with handcuffs. The entire restaurant staff stopped what they were doing, staring in confusion. Haley Brown Vincent, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, and attempted murder, Torres said firmly. You have the right to remain silent. Haley looked at me with pure hatred. Your mother was a traitor. She deserved what she got, and you deserve this. My mother was a hero, I said quietly. And she protected me even after death. Something your grandfather never did for you. They led her out in handcuffs while news cameras that the FBI had tipped off captured everything. The story broke that evening, restaurant con artist arrested for revenge scheme against whistleblower's son. It went national within hours. The next 3 months were a blur of legal proceedings. Marcus Chen and Kenzo Tanaka flew to Seattle to testify. James Rodriguez's family provided statements and evidence. The FBI had built an overwhelming case with Mom's documentation, and Haley's own recorded confession from our wired meeting sealed her fate. Her lawyers tried to argue that she'd been traumatized by her family's downfall, that she deserved sympathy. But the prosecutor presented evidence of premeditation spanning 5 years, detailed planning, and the deliberate targeting of innocent people. The jury took less than 4 hours to convict her on all counts. Haley was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Because the restaurant contracts were proven fraudulent, she'd used forged documents and false identities, the judge ordered everything returned to me, plus a portion of her personal assets as restitution for damages. Standing in that courtroom, watching her be led away, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction or revenge. Just emptiness. She'd stolen 2 years of my life, destroyed my trust in people, and nearly killed me. No prison sentence could give that back. But Dad reminded me of something Mom had written in her final letter: don't let their darkness define your light. I spent the next 2 months rebuilding. The FBI helped me legally reclaim the restaurant. And I started the process of rehiring staff, but only those who'd been manipulated by Haley, not those who'd knowingly participated in the scheme. I changed the name from Brown's Waterfront to Second Chance Diner. The name came from a conversation with Kenzo Tanaka, who'd flown back to Seattle to help me reopen. He'd survived his own ordeal with Haley and rebuilt his life in Portland. "We all deserve a second chance," he said while we painted the new sign together. "Your mother gave you one. Now you're giving yourself one. That's powerful." I designed a completely new menu, incorporating dishes that honored Mom's memory, her favorite recipes mixed with my own creative vision. I hung her final letter in a frame by the register, under glass so customers could read it. It became a conversation starter, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, love can survive. The grand reopening happened on what would have been Mom's 65th birthday. Dad cut the ribbon, tears streaming down his face. Agent Torres attended with flowers. Marcus, Kenzo, and even James Rodriguez's mother came to show their support. Local news covered the story, framing it as a tale of resilience and justice. That first night, we were packed. People came not just for the food but for the story. They wanted to support someone who'd survived betrayal and rebuilt. I worked the line personally, cooking every dish with the passion I'd almost lost forever. Around 11 p.m., after the last customer left, I stood alone in the kitchen. Dad walked in and put his hand on my shoulder. "Your mother would be so proud of you." I looked at her letter hanging near the entrance, her handwriting still clear and strong. "I wish she could see this." "She can, son. She can." I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the suicide attempt, the evidence Mom had left, the trial, and now this moment. Haley had tried to destroy me the way she thought my mother had destroyed her family. But she'd missed one crucial detail. Mom hadn't destroyed the Browns out of malice. She'd exposed criminals to protect innocent people. And I wasn't continuing a cycle of revenge. I was breaking it. The first year of running Second Chance Diner taught me more about resilience than any culinary school ever could. Every morning, I'd arrive before dawn to prep ingredients, and every night, I'd close by reading Mom's letter one more time. It became my ritual, my way of staying grounded. The restaurant became more than just a business. Word spread about the story, and I started receiving letters from people across the country who'd been betrayed, manipulated, or conned. Some had lost businesses. Others had lost marriages or friendships. They all shared one thing: they'd thought about giving up, just like I had on that bridge. I kept every letter in a box behind the register. On particularly difficult days, when the bills piled up or equipment broke down, I'd read through them to remember why I was doing this. One letter came from a woman in Boston who'd lost her bakery to a business partner. She wrote, "Your mother's love saved you. Your story saved me. I'm reopening next month." Dad retired from his mechanic shop and started helping me at the restaurant. He wasn't much of a cook, but he was excellent with customers. He'd tell stories about Mom, about how she'd been the strongest person he'd ever known, even when she was scared. People loved him. 6 months after reopening, Agent Torres stopped by for dinner. She'd been promoted to a supervisory role but still followed up on Mom's case personally. Over coffee, she told me something that changed my perspective entirely. "Your mother didn't just collect evidence against Haley," Torres said. "She also left funds in a trust. She wanted you to use them to help other victims of financial fraud rebuild their businesses." I stared at her in disbelief. "How much?" $200,000. "It's been sitting in an account, waiting for you to claim it. She set it up the month before she died." I thought about James Rodriguez, who never got his second chance. About Marcus Chen, who was still struggling to rebuild in San Francisco. About all the people who'd written to me, looking for hope. That's when I created the Second Chance Foundation. With Mom's money as seed funding and donations from customers and supporters, we started providing small grants to people who'd been victims of business fraud. We couldn't give everyone their dream back, but we could help them start over. Marcus Chen was our first recipient. We gave him $20,000 to open a small sandwich shop in San Francisco. Kenzo Tanaka helped us design the application process. Even James Rodriguez's mother joined our board, honoring her son's memory by helping others avoid his fate. The foundation grew faster than I expected. Within a year, we'd helped 12 people restart their businesses. Local news featured us again, and this time the story wasn't about revenge or crime, it was about healing and community. Haley sent me a letter from prison 2 years after her conviction. I almost threw it away without reading it, but Dad convinced me to at least look at it. Her handwriting was shaky, nothing like the confident woman I'd known. "Ethan, I don't expect forgiveness. I destroyed lives because I was raised to hate your mother. My grandfather filled my childhood with bitterness and anger. I became his weapon, and I can't undo that. But I want you to know, seeing what you've built from the ashes I created has changed something in me. You proved that love is stronger than revenge. I'm sorry." I never responded to her letter, but I didn't throw it away either. I filed it with all the others, a reminder that hurt people, but healed people can heal others. 3 years after that night on the bridge, Second Chance Diner had become a Seattle landmark. We'd expanded to a second location, hired 35 employees, and the foundation had helped over 50 entrepreneurs rebuild their lives. Dad managed the original location while I oversaw operations and the foundation. Every night before closing, no matter which location I was at, I'd stand in front of Mom's framed letter and read the final line, "Fight back." But I'd changed what those words meant. Fighting back didn't mean seeking revenge or harboring hatred. It meant choosing to build instead of destroy. It meant turning pain into purpose. It meant proving that even when someone tries to break you, you can rise stronger than before. I'd look up at the ceiling, imagining Mom watching, and whisper the same words I'd said every night for 3 years, "Mom, I rose again. And I'm helping others rise too." That was her real legacy. Not the evidence she'd left or the justice she'd secured. It was the reminder that love, even from beyond the grave, has the power to transform darkness into light. 5 years after reopening Second Chance Diner, I received a phone call that brought everything full circle. It was from a lawyer in Chicago representing the estate of Vincent Brown, Haley's grandfather. "Mr. Mercer, I know this is unusual, but Vincent Brown left specific instructions in his will that were only to be executed if certain conditions were met. One of those conditions was Haley's conviction for crimes related to your family." I sat down heavily in my office. What does a dead crime boss want with me? The lawyer's voice was measured. "He left you a letter. And a confession. He wants you to know the truth about what really happened to your mother's family in Chicago." 2 days later, I was on a plane to Chicago with Dad. We met the lawyer in a downtown office, and he handed me a sealed envelope with Vincent Brown's signature across the flap. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was written in careful, old-fashioned handwriting. Vincent had written it during his final days in prison, 3 years before he died. "Ethan Mercer, you don't know me, but I destroyed your mother's family before she destroyed mine. In 1994, before Sarah Chen became a whistleblower, I learned she was asking questions about our finances. I had her parents killed in what looked like a car accident. I threatened her younger brother until he fled to Taiwan and never contacted her again. I wanted to break her before she could break me. She went to the FBI not just out of duty, but out of grief and rage. I made her into the weapon that destroyed me." I stopped reading, my vision blurring. Dad took the letter from my hands and continued reading aloud. "I spent 20 years in prison teaching my granddaughter to hate Sarah Chen. I filled Haley with poison, turned her into someone capable of cruelty. I thought revenge would give our family meaning. Instead, I created a monster who hurt innocent people. By the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late. Haley was already planning her schemes. I tried to write to her, to stop her, but she wouldn't listen. I died knowing I'd condemned her to the same prison I lived in. This is my confession. Your mother was a hero who fought back against evil. I was the evil. I'm sorry. The room was silent except for Dad's quiet crying. Everything I thought I understood about Mom's story had just shifted. She hadn't just been a brave whistleblower. She'd been a daughter seeking justice for her murdered parents. A sister trying to protect her brother. A woman who'd lost everything before she'd even met Dad. There's more, the lawyer said, sliding another document across the table. Vincent Brown liquidated certain assets before his death and placed them in a trust. He wanted the money to go to victims of organized crime. The trust is worth $1.3 million, and he designated you as the administrator. I looked at the paperwork, completely overwhelmed. Why me? He wrote in his instructions that if anyone would use the money honorably, it would be Sarah Chen's son. He said you'd understand that breaking cycles of violence is the only real victory. I spent the next month processing this information. Vincent Brown had destroyed my mother's family, poisoned his own granddaughter, and ruined countless lives through his criminal empire. But in his final act, he tried to create something redemptive. I decided to fold the trust into the Second Chance Foundation, but with a new branch specifically for families affected by organized crime. We'd help people who'd lost loved ones, who'd been intimidated into silence, who'd been collateral damage in criminal operations. When I announced the expansion, Agent Torres attended the press conference. She spoke about Mom's courage and how appropriate it was that Vincent Brown's money would now undo some of the harm he'd caused. Marcus Chen flew in from San Francisco, where his sandwich shop had grown into 3 locations. Kenzo Tanaka came from Portland with his wife and new baby. Even some of the other FBI agents who'd worked Mom's original case in 1995 attended to show their support. That night, we held a private dinner at Second Chance Diner for everyone who'd been part of the journey. I stood up to make a toast, looking around at the faces of people who'd survived betrayal, loss, and pain. My mother once told me in her letter that I shouldn't let darkness define my light. I think she meant that we have a choice. We can let the people who hurt us turn us into bitter, vengeful versions of ourselves. Or we can take that pain and transform it into something that helps others. Dad raised his glass, his voice strong. To Sarah Chen Mercer. The woman who fought back with truth, and whose love still protects us. To Sarah, everyone echoed. I thought about Vincent Brown's confession, about Haley sitting in prison, about James Rodriguez who never got his second chance. The cycle of revenge had cost so many people so much. 10 years after that night on the bridge, Second Chance Diner had become something I never imagined. We had 5 locations across Washington and Oregon. The Second Chance Foundation had helped over 300 people rebuild their lives after fraud, betrayal, and financial manipulation. Dad was 70 now, still greeting customers at the original location every morning. His stories about Mom had become legendary among regulars. He'd added photos of her to the wall, young Sarah Chen smiling in Chicago, before everything changed. I got married to Elena, a food blogger who'd come to interview me about the restaurant and ended up staying in my life. We had a daughter, and I named her Sarah. When she was old enough to ask about her grandmother, I took her to the restaurant and showed her the framed letter. Your grandmother saved me, I told her. And now we save others. Agent Torres retired from the FBI and joined our foundation's board. She worked tirelessly to identify victims of financial crimes who needed help. Marcus Chen opened a culinary school in San Francisco that offered free training to people rebuilding after personal disasters. Kenzo Tanaka's restaurant in Portland became a partner location where we hosted fundraisers. Haley was released after serving 12 years. I heard she moved to a small town in Montana and worked as a baker, living quietly under supervision. I never reached out, and she never contacted me. Some stories don't need closure, just distance. Every night before closing, I still stood in front of Mom's letter. Little Sarah would sometimes stand beside me, holding my hand. I'd read the words aloud to her, fight back. "What does it mean, Daddy?" she asked one evening. I knelt down to her level. "It means when life tries to break you, you choose to build something beautiful instead." I looked up one last time and whispered, "Mom, I rose again. And I'm teaching the next generation to rise too." That was the greatest victory of all.